Picture this. A gray-haired engineer in Stuttgart stares at his computer screen. He spent 30 years perfecting combustion engines. 30 years of precision, calculation, mastery. But today, his department just got an email. Half the team is being let go. Not because they failed. Not because they weren't brilliant. But because the world decided overnight that what they know doesn't matter anymore. This is happening right now. Not in some distant future. Right now. Across Germany. The country that gave us BMW, Mercedes, Siemens, Bosch. The nation synonymous with engineering excellence. And it's collapsing from within. What you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about the global power balance. Because when Germany falls, the entire Western economic model falls with it. You see, we've been sold a lie. For decades, we've been told that German engineering is untouchable. That precision, that quality, that legendary Deutsche Qualität. It was supposed to be eternal, indestructible. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to say out loud. German engineers aren't just losing their edge. They're becoming obsolete, irrelevant, replaced. And the terrifying part? Most of them don't even see it coming. They're still operating under the old rules while the game has completely changed. And by the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late. The question isn't whether this collapse is real. The question is whether you're ready to understand why it's inevitable. Before we go deeper into this crisis, I need you to pause and ask yourself something. When was the last time you questioned what you were taught about success? About expertise? About the value of experience? Because what's happening to German engineers right now is coming for every industry, every profession, every country that refuses to adapt. So ask yourself, are you building skills for the world that was, or the world that's coming? Think about that. Really think about it. And if this video makes you uncomfortable, good. Hit that subscribe button, because we're about to dismantle some comfortable illusions. Let's start with the first crack in the foundation. Automation isn't just changing manufacturing. It's erasing it. For 100 years, German engineering dominance rested on one principle: human precision. The ability to machine parts to tolerances measured in micrometers. The skill to assemble complex systems with consistency that machines couldn't match. That human touch was Germany's competitive moat. But that moat just evaporated. Modern CNC machines, powered by AI-driven adaptive algorithms, now achieve tolerances that human hands never could. They learn from every operation. They self-correct in real time. They don't get tired. They don't make mistakes. And here's the part that keeps German manufacturing executives awake at night. These machines are cheaper to operate in China, India, Vietnam than paying a German engineer's salary. Walk into any Siemens factory today and you'll see the future. Or rather, you'll see the absence of a future for human engineers. Automated assembly lines staffed by collaborative robots. Digital twins simulating entire production processes before a single physical part is made. Predictive maintenance systems that diagnose problems before they occur. The few humans left on the floor aren't engineers anymore. They're technicians, button pushers, overseers of machines that do the real thinking. The craft, the skill, the decades of accumulated knowledge that used to define German engineering. It's being compiled into software, packaged into algorithms, sold as a subscription service to the highest bidder. And that bidder is rarely in Germany anymore. Here's a number that should terrify you. Between 2018 and 2023, Germany lost over 87,000 manufacturing jobs. Not to recession, not to market crashes, to automation, to machines that learn to do in seconds what took engineers years to master. And this isn't slowing down. It's accelerating. Bosch just announced plans to cut 5,500 jobs. Continental is eliminating thousands more. ZF Friedrichshafen, one of the world's largest automotive suppliers, is in the middle of massive restructuring. The official line is always the same: adapting to market changes, improving efficiency, staying competitive. But read between the lines. What they're really saying is, we don't need human engineers anymore. The machines are better. The software is faster. The algorithms are cheaper. But automation is just the visible wound. The real bleeding is happening somewhere most people aren't looking. Outsourcing. Not the old-school outsourcing of the 90s where companies moved assembly lines to cheaper countries. No, this is something far more insidious. This is intellectual outsourcing. The transfer of engineering knowledge itself. For decades, German companies held their expertise close. Trade secrets, proprietary processes, knowledge passed down through apprenticeships and decades of experience. That was the real value. But globalization and cost pressure changed the calculation. Why pay a senior engineer in Munich €90,000 a year when you can hire 3 engineers in Bangalore for the same price? At first, it was just support work, then design, then R&D, then core innovation. Look at what happened with automotive engineering. 20 years ago, if you wanted to design a world-class engine or transmission, you came to Germany. Stuttgart, Munich, Wolfsburg. That's where the magic happened. Today, a huge portion of automotive engineering is done in India, China, Eastern Europe. Not because German engineers got worse, but because engineers everywhere else got access to the same tools, the same software, the same training. And they're willing to do it for a fraction of the cost. CATIA, Siemens NX, ANSYS, all the high-end CAD and simulation software that used to require years of expertise. Now it's available globally. Cloud-based. Subscription model. An engineer in Pune has the same computational power as an engineer in Stuttgart. But the one in Pune costs 70% less. And here's where it gets darker. When you outsource engineering, you don't just outsource labor. You outsource learning. Every project that goes to Bangalore is a project that doesn't train a new generation in Germany. Every design iteration done in Shanghai is accumulated expertise that stays in Shanghai. Over time, the center of gravity shifts. Quietly, irreversibly. 10 years ago, Germany was teaching the world how to engineer. Today, the world is out-engineering Germany. And German companies are complicit. They're the ones making this choice. Prioritizing quarterly earnings over long-term capability. Sacrificing the future to optimize the present. Then there's the green transition. On paper, this should be Germany's moment. The Energiewende, the transition to renewable energy, should play to German strengths. Engineering complex systems. Precision manufacturing. Long-term industrial planning. But here's the cruel irony. The green transition is killing German engineering faster than any other force. Why? Because Germany spent a century perfecting the wrong technology. Internal combustion engines. Diesel powertrains. Turbochargers. Fuel injection systems. These weren't just products. They were entire ecosystems of knowledge. Supply chains spanning thousands of companies. Hundreds of thousands of engineers whose entire careers were built on making machines that burn fuel slightly more efficiently. And now, in the span of a decade, all of that knowledge is being declared obsolete. Electric vehicles don't need transmissions. They don't need exhaust systems. They don't need half the components that German engineers spent generations perfecting. A Tesla Model 3 has about 20 moving parts in its powertrain. A comparable Mercedes has over 2,000. Every one of those parts represented jobs. Engineering hours. Specialized knowledge. All of it evaporating. And the brutal part? The core technology of electric vehicles, batteries and electric motors, isn't a German strength. It's an Asian strength. China controls the battery supply chain. South Korea and Japan perfected electric motor mass production. Germany is a follower in the technologies that matter for the future. The very future their own policies are forcing. The German government mandated aggressive emissions targets, pushed the automotive industry toward electrification, and in doing so, pulled the rug out from under their own engineering workforce. Volkswagen, the largest employer in Germany, is now in crisis mode. Closing factories, cutting tens of thousands of jobs. Their CEO recently admitted they're 2 to 3 years behind Chinese EV makers in technology and cost. 2 to 3 years. In an industry where product cycles are 5 to 7 years, that's a death sentence. And it's not just automotive. The entire energy sector is in upheaval. Coal-fired power plants shutting down. Nuclear reactors decommissioned. Natural gas projects cancelled. Each one of these closures represents hundreds of specialized engineers whose expertise is suddenly worthless. The wind and solar industries that are supposed to replace them? Dominated by Chinese and Danish companies. The turbines installed across Germany are made in China. The solar panels on German roofs are made in China. Even when the projects are in Germany, the core technology and manufacturing are elsewhere. German engineers are reduced to installation and maintenance. Service work. The high-value innovation, the design, the manufacturing, it's all migrated. And this transition is happening at breakneck speed. Faster than the workforce can retrain. Faster than education systems can adapt. Faster than the social safety net can absorb. You have 50-year-old engineers with deep expertise in combustion systems. What are they supposed to do? Go back to university to learn battery chemistry? Most won't. Most can't. So they exit the workforce. Take early retirement. And with them goes decades of institutional knowledge. Gone forever. Now let's talk about something nobody wants to acknowledge. The education system is broken. The very system that created Germany's engineering dominance is now strangling it. For over a century, Germany's dual education system was the envy of the world, combining classroom theory with hands-on apprenticeships, creating engineers who understood both the math and the metal. But that system was designed for a stable world. A world where technologies matured slowly, where skills learned at 20 were still relevant at 50. That world is dead. Today, the half-life of technical skills is less than 5 years. The programming languages, the software tools, the methodologies that define modern engineering change faster than universities can update curricula. By the time a textbook is printed, it's outdated. By the time a degree program is accredited, the industry has moved on. German universities are still teaching mechanical engineering like it's 1995. Thermodynamics, statics, dynamics, all the classical foundations. Important, sure, but woefully insufficient. Today's engineers need to code. They need to understand machine learning, data analytics, cloud infrastructure, cybersecurity. They need to be as comfortable with Python and TensorFlow as they are with CAD software. But German engineering programs are slow to adapt, bureaucratic, resistant to change. The professors teaching today were trained in the 80s and 90s. They teach what they know, and what they know is increasingly irrelevant. Meanwhile, American universities are pumping out software engineers. Chinese universities are producing AI researchers by the hundreds of thousands. Indian institutes are training cloud architects and data scientists. Germany is still perfecting the art of teaching mechanical drawing. And the apprenticeship system, once Germany's secret weapon, is collapsing. Young people don't want to spend 3 years learning a trade when they can do a coding bootcamp in 6 months and earn twice as much. The number of apprentices in manufacturing has dropped by 30% in the last decade. Companies can't find young people willing to train as machinists, toolmakers, industrial mechanics. Why would they? Those jobs are disappearing, automated away or outsourced. The rational choice for a young German is to study computer science, finance, or leave the country for better opportunities. The result? A generation gap. The older engineers are retiring or being laid off. The younger generation isn't replacing them. And the middle, the skilled engineers in their 30s and 40s who should be the backbone, are leaving. Emigrating to the US, Canada, Switzerland. Countries that pay better and offer more opportunity. Here's a case study that crystallizes everything. Bosch. One of Germany's most iconic engineering companies. Over 130 years old. 400,000 employees worldwide. A symbol of German industrial might. And right now, Bosch is in existential crisis. They were a dominant supplier of automotive components, fuel injection systems, braking systems, sensors. They built their empire on internal combustion engines. But as the industry pivots to electric, Bosch is stuck. They invested billions in diesel technology just as Dieselgate exploded. They're playing catch-up in electric powertrains. Their battery technology lags behind Asian competitors. And their response? Mass layoffs, factory closures, restructuring. In 2023, they announced up to 5,500 job cuts. In 2024, more cuts are coming. These aren't factory workers. These are engineers, project managers, R&D staff, people who dedicated careers to perfecting technologies that are now obsolete. What's happening at Bosch is a microcosm of Germany's entire crisis. A company built on engineering excellence, watching that excellence become irrelevant. They're trying to pivot, investing in software, IoT, connected systems. But they're competing against companies born digital. Tesla, Nvidia, Chinese tech giants who think in software first, hardware second. Bosch thinks in hardware first, software second. That's a fatal inversion in the modern world. And it's not just Bosch. Continental, another massive German automotive supplier, is in the same boat. Cutting thousands of jobs. Closing plants. ZF Friedrichshafen. Same story. Schaeffler. Same story. These are companies that employed generations of families. Companies that defined entire regions. Now they're contracting, retrenching, desperately trying to adapt to a world that moved faster than they could. And the German government? They see the crisis. They know what's happening. But they're trapped by their own ideological commitments. The green transition is politically untouchable. The emissions targets are locked in by EU regulations. Backing off would be political suicide. So they push forward, hoping the renewable energy sector will create enough jobs to replace what's being lost. But it won't. It can't. The renewable sector is less labor-intensive, more automated, more reliant on imported components. For every job created in wind or solar, 3 are lost in traditional automotive and energy. The math doesn't work. And retraining programs are a joke. You can't take a 50-year-old combustion engineer and turn him into a data scientist in 6 months. It's fantasy. But politicians need to say something, so they fund retraining programs that have single-digit success rates and declare victory. Meanwhile, the competition isn't standing still. China isn't just catching up. They're leaping ahead. In batteries, in electric motors, in solar panels, in wind turbines, China is now the global leader. Not in cost alone, in technology, in innovation. Their engineers are younger, hungrier, and operating at scale Germany can't match. And they're not burdened by legacy systems. They didn't have to dismantle a century of combustion expertise. They just built the new thing from scratch. That's an enormous advantage. Creative destruction is easier when you're the creator, not the thing being destroyed. Germany is the thing being destroyed. And the sad part? It's self-inflicted. Policy choices, corporate short-termism, educational inertia, all solvable problems. But solving them requires honesty, courage, and long-term thinking, none of which are in abundant supply. Let's talk about the tech giants and the digital divide. Because there's another layer to this crisis that most people completely miss. Germany still thinks in terms of hardware, machines, physical products you can touch. That was the right mindset for the 20th century. But the 21st century is defined by software, data, and networks. And Germany is catastrophically behind in all three. Where are the German equivalents of Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple? They don't exist. Where are the German cloud platforms? The German AI labs? The German social networks? They don't exist. Germany has SAP, a legacy enterprise software company. And that's about it. Everything else is American or Chinese. This isn't a coincidence. It's a structural failure. Germany's engineering culture is allergic to the move fast break things ethos of Silicon Valley. German engineers want perfection. Six Sigma quality. Zero defects. That works great for cars and industrial machines. It's a disaster for software. In software, perfection is the enemy of progress. You need to ship fast, iterate, learn from users, fail quickly and pivot. German culture hates that. They want to plan everything, engineer everything, get it perfect before launch. By the time they do, the market has moved on. Look at German car companies trying to build software. It's embarrassing. Volkswagen's software division is years behind schedule and billions over budget. Their ID.3 electric car launched with buggy software that had to be updated in dealerships. Mercedes, BMW, Audi, all of them are struggling with in-car software. Meanwhile, Tesla does over-the-air updates like it's nothing. Chinese EV makers have app ecosystems that make German cars feel like antiques. This is the digital divide. And it's not just about cars. It's about everything. Industry 4.0, the digital transformation of manufacturing, was a German concept. But who's actually leading the implementation? American software companies. Siemens, Germany's industrial software champion, is strong. But they're competing with American giants and Chinese upstarts who move faster and think bigger. And here's the existential threat. The next generation of engineers doesn't want to work on hardware. They want to work on AI, on apps, on crypto, on virtual reality. The sexy, high-pay, high-status jobs are all in software. Hardware is seen as boring, low margin, commoditized. So the best and brightest German students are either studying computer science or leaving Germany entirely. The brain drain is real. Why work at BMW in Munich when you can work at Google in Zurich or Meta in London and earn double? Why stay in Germany where housing is expensive, taxes are high, and career growth is limited, when you can go to the US and join a startup with equity upside? This isn't about patriotism. This is rational self-interest. And the result is that Germany is losing its top talent. The mediocre stay. The exceptional leave. Over time, that's a death spiral. Then there's the regulatory environment. Germany and the EU pride themselves on regulation, consumer protection, worker rights, environmental standards. All good things in principle. But in practice, they're choking innovation. Starting a tech company in Germany is a bureaucratic nightmare. Labor laws make it almost impossible to fire underperforming employees. Privacy regulations make it difficult to leverage data for AI. Environmental permits take years. Every new factory, every new project, bogs down in impact assessments and community consultations. Meanwhile, in China, if the government decides they want a new EV factory, it's built in 18 months. In the US, Tesla built Gigafactory Texas in under 2 years. In Germany, Tesla's Gigafactory Berlin took 4 years and endless legal battles with environmental groups. 4 years. In a fast-moving industry, 4 years is an eternity. By the time the factory opened, the design was already outdated. This regulatory sclerosis doesn't just slow down foreign companies. It suffocates German companies too. Every innovation has to navigate a maze of regulations. Every new technology faces precautionary principle objections. Germany is so risk-averse that they're regulating themselves into irrelevance. And the engineers feel it. They're frustrated, demoralized. They want to build cool things, solve hard problems. But they spend half their time on compliance paperwork, filling out forms, attending safety meetings, documenting everything in triplicate. It's soul-crushing. And it's why the ambitious ones leave. They go to places where they can actually engineer, where they can move fast and see their ideas come to life. Germany has become a place where engineering careers go to die slowly. Death by 1,000 regulations. Now we arrive at the most uncomfortable truth. Demographics. Germany is old, and getting older. The median age is 47. Nearly a quarter of the population is over 65. The birth rate is 1.5 children per woman, well below replacement. This is a society aging in real time, and that has profound implications for engineering. Engineering is a young person's game, not because older engineers aren't smart, but because they're less adaptable, less willing to learn new tools, new languages, new paradigms. A 60-year-old engineer who spent 35 years mastering mechanical systems isn't going to retrain as a machine learning engineer. It's not happening. But that 60-year-old is still working, because Germany's pension system is underwater and people need to work longer. So you have an aging engineering workforce clinging to old skills in a world that's moved on. And there aren't enough young people to replace them. The German birth rate crashed in the 90s. The cohort entering the workforce now is significantly smaller than the one retiring. Even if every young German wanted to be an engineer, which they don't, there wouldn't be enough of them. Immigration could solve this. Germany has tried. They opened the doors to skilled migration. But it's not working as planned. The best engineers from India, China, Eastern Europe, they don't want to move to Germany. They want to move to the US, Canada, Australia. Countries with better pay, lower taxes, easier immigration paths, and more dynamic economies. Germany gets second-tier immigrants. Not the MIT grads. Not the IIT toppers. Those people go to Silicon Valley. Germany gets the rest. Which is fine, but it's not going to save their engineering sector. And the immigrants who do come face a hostile environment. Germany is not a welcoming place for outsiders. The language barrier is real. German companies expect you to speak fluent German. Cultural integration is difficult. Racism and xenophobia are more common than Germans like to admit. So even skilled immigrants often leave after a few years. They get experience, pad their resume, and move on to greener pastures. Germany is becoming a training ground for talent that ends up benefiting other countries. This demographic collapse is slow-moving but unstoppable. Every year, more engineers retire than graduate. Every year, the average age of the workforce increases. Every year, the accumulated knowledge and expertise erodes a little more. And there's no policy fix. You can't legislate people into having more children. You can't force young engineers to stay. All you can do is manage the decline. The final blow, and this is the one that ties everything together, is the loss of industrial ecosystems. Germany's engineering strength was never just about individual companies or engineers. It was about ecosystems. Dense networks of suppliers, customers, research institutes, universities, all clustered together. The Mittelstand, the small and medium-sized companies that form the backbone of German manufacturing. These companies didn't compete in isolation. They collaborated, shared knowledge, co-developed technologies. That ecosystem was Germany's real competitive advantage. But ecosystems are fragile. When the anchor companies decline, the whole network unravels. When Volkswagen cuts orders, hundreds of suppliers feel the pain. When Bosch closes a factory, the entire region suffers. Machine shops close. Engineering consultancies lose clients. Universities lose research funding. Young people leave for opportunities elsewhere. Once an ecosystem starts to collapse, it's almost impossible to reverse. Because ecosystems are built on trust, relationships, and tacit knowledge. Things that take decades to develop and can be destroyed in years. And we're watching it happen in real time. The automotive clusters around Stuttgart and Munich are hollowing out. The industrial regions of North Rhine-Westphalia are in decline. Eastern Germany, which never fully recovered from reunification, is being hit even harder. These aren't just economic statistics. These are communities disintegrating. Towns where 3 generations worked at the same factory, watching that factory close. Engineers who thought they had stable careers, suddenly unemployed at 50 with no prospects. This is a social and human catastrophe unfolding in slow motion. And the international implications are staggering. Germany is the economic engine of Europe. If Germany declines, the EU declines. The euro weakens. Political instability increases. We're already seeing the signs. The rise of populist parties. Anti-immigrant sentiment. Economic nationalism. These are symptoms of a society under stress. A society that feels like it's losing its place in the world. And they're right. They are losing their place. The 20th century belonged to the West. The 21st century belongs to Asia. Germany's decline is just one chapter in that larger story. The transition from a unipolar Western-dominated world to a multipolar world where China, India, and other Asian powers set the agenda. German engineers are obsolete not because they're bad at engineering, but because the kind of engineering they're good at isn't valuable anymore. The world has moved on. So where does this leave us? Staring at the wreckage of a system that once defined industrial excellence. German engineering was a religion, a source of national pride, an identity, and it's crumbling, not because of war or natural disaster, but because of policy failures, corporate short-sightedness, technological disruption, and demographic reality. The engineers themselves are victims, caught in a transition they didn't choose and can't control. Many of them are brilliant, dedicated, hard-working, but brilliance doesn't matter when the game changes. You can be the best horse and buggy engineer in the world, but when cars are invented, your skills are worthless. That's where German engineers are today, masters of technologies the world no longer needs. And the tragedy is that this was predictable. Economists warned about automation. Demographers warned about aging populations. Strategists warned about Chinese competition. But warnings are easy to ignore when times are good. And times were good for a long time. Too long. Germany got complacent. They believed their own hype, assumed their dominance was permanent. And now they're paying the price. The companies will survive, probably. Bosch, Siemens, Volkswagen, they're big enough to adapt. They'll become smaller, leaner, more software-focused. They'll outsource more, automate more, move production to cheaper countries. But they'll survive. The engineers won't. Not all of them. Many will exit the workforce, take early retirement, drift into lower-paid service work. Some will retrain successfully. Most won't. And the next generation won't follow in their footsteps. The era of the German engineer as a global gold standard is over. What replaces it? Probably nothing. At least not in Germany. The future of engineering is distributed, global, software-driven, and increasingly concentrated in Asia and the US. Europe is becoming a museum, a place to visit and admire past glories, but not a place where the future is built. If you're watching this and you're an engineer, in Germany or anywhere else, the message should be clear. Adapt or die. The skills that got you here won't get you there. Lifelong learning isn't a buzzword. It's survival. You need to be constantly updating your toolkit, learning new software, understanding new technologies, building skills that are hard to automate and hard to outsource. Creativity, problem solving, cross-disciplinary thinking. Those are the skills that will matter. Pure technical expertise in a narrow domain? That's increasingly worthless. Machines and cheap labor can do that. What they can't do is think strategically, communicate across disciplines, and navigate complexity. That's where the value is moving. And if you're young and deciding on a career, look at where the world is going, not where it's been. Don't chase prestige. Don't follow your parents' footsteps. Look at what skills are in demand, what industries are growing, what problems need solving, and position yourself there. For countries and policymakers, the lesson is even harsher. You cannot regulate your way to prosperity. You cannot protect your way to competitiveness. The only way forward is through. Embrace disruption. Invest in education. Make it easier to start companies. Attract and retain talent. Accept that some industries will die and new ones must be born. Germany's mistake was trying to preserve the past. They should have been building the future. But that requires courage. It requires telling voters hard truths. It requires accepting short-term pain for long-term gain. Democratic politics is bad at that. So countries will continue to make Germany's mistakes. They'll prop up dying industries. They'll protect incumbent companies. They'll resist change until change is forced upon them. And by then, it will be too late. This isn't a story about Germany. It's a story about what happens when the world changes faster than institutions can adapt. It's a warning for every country, every industry, every profession. Nothing is permanent. No competitive advantage lasts forever. The skills that make you successful today will make you obsolete tomorrow if you don't evolve. And evolution is painful. It requires humility. The humility to admit you don't have all the answers. That what worked before won't work now. That you need to start over. Most people can't do that. Most organizations can't do that. So they decline. Slowly. Then suddenly. That's what we're witnessing in Germany. The slow decline that everyone sees but no one can stop. Because stopping it would require changing everything. And changing everything is too hard. So they'll manage the decline instead. Make it as painless as possible. Tell comforting lies about green transitions and digital futures. And hope that somehow, miraculously, things will work out. They won't. The German engineer, once the symbol of precision, excellence, and reliability, is becoming a relic. A symbol of a world that no longer exists. And there's a deep sadness in that. These are good people. People who believed in craftsmanship. Who took pride in their work. Who built things that lasted. But the modern economy doesn't reward that. It rewards speed, iteration, scale. Things that can be copied and distributed globally at zero marginal cost. Software, not hardware. Services, not products. Intangibles, not tangibles. The entire value structure of the economy has shifted. And German engineers are on the wrong side of that shift. They're not obsolete because they're bad. They're obsolete because the world decided their kind of good doesn't matter anymore. That's the cruelest part. It's not personal. It's structural. And there's no villain to blame. Just the relentless churn of creative destruction. The same force that made Germany great is now tearing it apart. So what happens next? More layoffs. More factory closures. More restructuring. The slow hollowing out of Germany's industrial base. Some companies will pivot successfully. Most won't. The country will get poorer. Relatively, at first. Then absolutely. Living standards will stagnate. Then decline. Political extremism will rise as people look for someone to blame. Immigrants. The EU. Globalization. Capitalism. They'll blame everything except the real cause, their own inability to adapt. And life will go on. Engineers will retire. Factories will close. Grass will grow over abandoned industrial sites. And the world will keep spinning. Because the world doesn't care about Germany's problems. China will keep rising. America will keep innovating. India will keep growing. And Germany will become what Britain became after World War II. A former great power clinging to past glory, slowly fading into geopolitical irrelevance. Unless something changes. Unless there's a radical rethinking of education, industrial policy, and innovation. But that seems unlikely. The political will isn't there. The sense of urgency isn't there. So the decline will continue. And the German engineer, that proud symbol of a bygone era, will fade into history. The tools that built the 20th century won't build the 21st. The skills that won the last war won't win the next one. And the engineers who mastered the old world are discovering, too late, that the new world has no place for them. That's the hidden crisis. Not that German engineers are failing, but that their success no longer matters. They're playing a game that ended without anyone telling them. And now they're standing on an empty field, holding trophies no one cares about, wondering what went wrong. Everything went wrong. And nothing went wrong. The world just moved on. That's the brutal, inescapable truth. The world moved on. And Germany didn't. This isn't the end of Germany. Countries don't disappear. But it is the end of Germany as an engineering superpower. That chapter is closing. What the next chapter holds, nobody knows. Maybe they'll find a new identity, a new source of competitive advantage. Maybe they'll become a leader in something else. Or maybe they'll just be another mid-sized European country with a glorious past and a mediocre present. Time will tell. But for the engineers living through this transition, time has already told. And the verdict is harsh. Their expertise is obsolete. Their careers are over. And the future belongs to someone else. That's the reality they're waking up to. Every day. In every factory closure announcement. In every layoff notice. In every retraining program that goes nowhere. The world doesn't need them anymore. And there's no coming back from that. So here we are. At the end of an era. Watching one of the greatest concentrations of engineering talent in human history fade into irrelevance. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. With spreadsheets and corporate restructuring announcements. With politicians giving speeches about transitions and opportunities while workers lose their livelihoods. With the quiet desperation of skilled people who did everything right and still lost. That's the hidden crisis. The human cost of technological change. The silent suffering of those left behind. We talk about disruption like it's exciting, like it's progress, and maybe it is. But for the people being disrupted, it's devastation. It's the destruction of their world. And we owe them the honesty to acknowledge that. To stop pretending that retraining programs and unemployment benefits make it okay. They don't. What's happening to German engineers is a tragedy. An avoidable tragedy. Maybe. But a tragedy nonetheless. And it's happening right now. While we watch. If this video made you think, if it challenged your assumptions about progress and expertise, then I've done my job. This isn't just about Germany. It's about all of us. About the skills we're building. The careers we're choosing. The future we're preparing for. Are you ready for a world where what you know becomes worthless overnight? Where decades of experience count for nothing. Where the only constant is change. Because that's the world we live in now. And the engineers of Germany are the canary in the coal mine. What's happening to them is coming for everyone. Every profession. Every industry. The only question is whether you'll see it coming and adapt, or whether you'll be caught off guard like they were. Think about that. Really think about it. And if you want to keep exploring these uncomfortable truths about our changing world, hit that subscribe button. Because we're just getting started. There are more illusions to shatter. More comfortable lies to expose. And I'll be here, digging into the stories no one else wants to tell. Thank you for watching. Thank you for thinking. And I'll see you in the next one.